That $5,000 was my family's future, but one woman's judgment at an ATM nearly made me lose it all, and my freedom. The numbers on the screen were beautiful. $5,000. It was the biggest cash withdrawal I'd ever made in my life, and every single digit felt like a tiny victory. This was the down payment for the car. Not just any car, but a safe, reliable minivan for my wife, Sarah. Our second kid was due in 3 months, and cramming 2 car seats into our little sedan was already giving me nightmares. Sarah thought we were just going to look at models this weekend, but I'd been saving for a year to surprise her. I was practically vibrating with excitement as the machine started whirring, counting out the crisp $100 bills. That's when I heard it. A loud, theatrical sigh from behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. A woman, probably in her late 50s, was standing there with her arms crossed, tapping her foot like a metronome of impatience. She had the haircut you see on angry news anchors, a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than my first car, and a face pinched into a permanent state of disapproval. I gave her a quick, polite nod and turned back to the ATM, which was still spitting out bills. It was a big transaction, so it was taking a minute. Ahem! This time it was louder, more pointed. I focused on the screen, gathering the last of the bills. "Almost done," I said, trying to keep my voice friendly. "Some of us have places to be," she snapped. Her voice was like gravel in a blender. "I don't understand why you people have to make everything so complicated." You people. There it was. My good mood instantly curdled. I've heard that phrase my whole life, and it never means anything good. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the goal. The van. Sarah's smile. Don't let this stranger ruin it. I carefully counted the cash, folded it, and put it into an envelope. As I was putting the envelope in my jacket pocket, she took a step closer. The smell of her sharp, expensive perfume filled the small ATM vestibule. "Is that even your card?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with suspicion as she looked at my hand and then back at my face. I just froze. I looked at her, then down at my own debit card with my name, David Miller, clearly printed on it. The sheer audacity of the question was staggering. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You heard me," she said, puffing out her chest. "You've been here for 10 minutes, taking out a mountain of cash. It looks suspicious. I have a right to be concerned about the security of my bank." I just shook my head and started to walk past her. This wasn't a fight worth having. "Have a nice day, ma'am," I muttered, heading for the door. "Don't you walk away from me!" she screeched. I heard a fumbling sound and turned to see she had her phone out, her thumb jabbing at the screen. "I'm calling the police. Yes, I'm reporting a robbery in progress." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just an annoying, racist woman anymore. This was something else entirely. This could ruin my life. I stopped with my hand on the door. Running would only make me look guilty. My heart was pounding against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anger and fear. "Yes, hello?" she said into the phone, her voice suddenly high and shaky, playing the victim. "There's a very large, aggressive man at the Bank of America on Elm Street. He's been at the ATM forever, and he just took out thousands of dollars. I think he might have a weapon. I'm scared for my life. Please, hurry." She was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. I just stood there, speechless, as she described me like I was a monster from a horror movie. A few minutes later, the dreaded sound of sirens grew closer, and the red and blue lights washed over the glass walls of the vestibule. A police cruiser pulled up right in front of the bank, and my stomach twisted into a knot. The woman, Carol, I saw her name on her credit card when she finally started her own transaction, had a smug, triumphant smirk on her face. Her savior had arrived. A tall officer stepped out of the car. He was broad-shouldered with a calm, no-nonsense expression. He looked at Carol, who was pointing a trembling finger at me. Then his eyes landed on me. His face, which had been a mask of professional neutrality, suddenly changed. A flicker of recognition, then confusion, washed over his features. He ignored the woman completely and walked straight towards me. Carol's smirk widened, thinking he was coming to arrest me. But then the officer stopped right in front of me, a small, baffled smile touching his lips. He looked at the envelope of cash peeking out of my pocket, then back at my face. "David, what are you doing here? Sarah told me you weren't picking up the cash for her new car until after work." The world snapped back into focus. Mark, my brother-in-law, my wife Sarah's older brother, a cop for the last 15 years. The knot in my stomach didn't just loosen, it completely dissolved into a puddle of relief so profound my knees felt weak. A disbelieving laugh escaped my lips. "Mark, what are you—" "Oh, man, you are not going to believe this." I ran a hand over my face. "I was trying to get the cash without Sarah knowing. It was supposed to be a surprise." Mark shook his head, a grin spreading across his face. "Classic Dave. Go big or go home, huh?" He clapped me on the shoulder, the gesture friendly and reassuring. For a second, it felt like we were just two guys at a family barbecue. But we weren't. We were in a bank vestibule with a woman who looked like her face was about to explode. "What is going on here?" Carol shrieked, her voice hitting a register that could shatter glass. Her phone was still in her hand, pointing at us like a weapon. "Officer, do you know this man? He's clearly a criminal. Are you helping him escape? Is this some kind of conspiracy?" Mark's smile vanished. He turned to face her, and the friendly brother-in-law was gone, replaced instantly by Officer Thompson. His back straightened, his voice dropped an octave, and it was pure, unadulterated authority. "Ma'am," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument, "this is David Miller. He is my sister's husband. He's a software engineer and has been a customer at this bank for over a decade." Carol's jaw worked silently for a moment, her brain seeming to short-circuit as it tried to process this new information. The smug certainty on her face flickered, replaced by a flash of confusion, but it was quickly bulldozed by sheer stubborn indignation. "I don't care who he is," she spat. "I saw what I saw. He was acting suspiciously, withdrawing a criminal amount of money. You're his family? Then you're compromised. I want your badge number. I want to speak to your supervisor. I have this all on video." "Ma'am, you called 911 and reported a robbery in progress," Mark said, his voice dangerously low. "You stated he might have a weapon and that you were in fear for your life. That is a serious felony accusation. Given that I can see he has no weapon, and I know for a fact he's just surprising my sister with a new minivan for their growing family, I suggest you think very carefully about your next words." My own anger, which had been smothered by fear, came roaring back to life. "She called me, 'you people,'" I said, looking straight at Mark. "She asked if the card was even mine." Mark's jaw clenched. It was a tiny movement, but I knew what it meant. The professional calm was now a thin veneer over a core of cold fury. He understood exactly what this was about. It wasn't about a suspicious transaction. It was about a black man daring to have $5,000 in his account. Just then, the inner door of the bank swung open. A man in a slightly rumpled suit, his name tag reading "Mr. Henderson, Branch Manager," hurried out, his face pale with worry. "Officer, is everything all right? We heard a commotion." He looked from Mark's uniform to my face to Carol, who was still fuming. "Mr. Miller, hello," he said, his expression clearing with relief when he saw me. "I hope there isn't a problem." "This woman called the police on me for using the ATM," I explained, my voice tight. Mr. Henderson's eyes widened as he looked at Carol. A flicker of recognition and something else, dread, crossed his face. He seemed to shrink a little. "He was taking too long. It was suspicious." Carol defended herself, gesturing wildly. "Mr. Miller just made a legitimate, pre-approved large cash withdrawal from his own savings account," Mr. Henderson said, his voice firm as he addressed Mark. "He's one of our most valued customers. Everything is perfectly in order." He then turned his full attention to Carol, his professional demeanor cracking under a visible layer of exhaustion. He sighed, a deep, world-weary sound, and looked at Mark. "Officer," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose, "this woman, this is Carol Davenport. Her husband is Arthur Davenport, one of the senior partners at the law firm that holds the primary account for our entire banking franchise. And honestly, at this point, I really think you should call him directly." The name Arthur Davenport hung in the air, thick and heavy. Carol's face, which had been contorted with rage, softened into a mask of pure, unadulterated smugness. She crossed her arms, a triumphant smirk returning. She thought the mention of her powerful husband was her trump card, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. She was wrong. My brother-in-law, Mark, didn't flinch. In fact, a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was the kind of smile that said, You have no idea how badly you just messed up." He pulled out his own phone. "You know what, Mr. Henderson? That's an excellent idea." He dialed a number from memory. As it rang, he put it on speakerphone for everyone to hear. "Hey, Art," Mark said casually into the phone. "It's Mark Thompson." "Yeah, Sarah's husband." A booming, friendly voice came through the speaker. "Mark, my man, to what do I owe the pleasure? Everything okay with you and Sarah?" "We're fine, Art, but I'm actually down at the Bank of America on Elm," Mark said, his eyes locked on Carol, whose face was beginning to pale. "I'm on duty, and I've run into a bit of a situation here with your wife." There was a moment of confused silence on the other end. "Carol, what did she do now?" The weariness in his voice was telling. This clearly wasn't the first call he'd received like this. "Well," Mark began, his voice dripping with professional calm, "she just made a false 911 call reporting an armed robbery in progress. The alleged perpetrator was my brother-in-law, David, who was just trying to withdraw cash to buy my sister a minivan. Mrs. Davenport here accused him of having a weapon, said she feared for her life, and made it very clear her suspicions were based on his race." The silence on the other end was now deafening. I could hear a faint, muffled sound, like a man putting his head in his hands. Carol looked like a ghost. The color had completely drained from her face. "Furthermore," Mark continued, pressing his advantage, "I have the bank manager here, Mr. Henderson, who can attest to the fact that David is a valued customer making a legitimate transaction, and David himself is willing to press charges for harassment and filing a false police report. Given the severity of a false felony accusation, especially one with such clear racial bias, I'm thinking this could get complicated, legally speaking." "Put her on the phone." Arthur's voice was now quiet, cold, and utterly terrifying. Mark held the phone out to Carol. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely take it. "Arthur, dear, it's a misunderstanding," she stammered into the receiver. We couldn't hear his words, but we could hear the tone. It was a low, furious growl that went on for a solid minute. Carol's face crumpled. The smugness, the anger, the entitlement, it all melted away, replaced by pure, pathetic fear. Tears started streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She nodded silently, whispering, "Yes, Arthur," and "I understand, Arthur," over and over. When she handed the phone back to Mark, she looked like a completely different person. She looked broken. "Mark!" Arthur's voice came back on the speaker, heavy with resignation. "My deepest, most sincere apologies to you and especially to your brother-in-law. I am mortified. There is no excuse. None. Please tell David that our firm will be making a $50,000 donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in his name. It's the least I can do. As for Carol, she will be issuing a personal written apology, and believe me when I say her outings will be severely restricted from now on. I'll handle this." Mark nodded. I appreciate that, Art. I'll let David decide if he still wants to press charges." He hung up the phone. The vestibule was silent except for Carol's quiet sobbing. She wouldn't even look at me. She just stared at the floor, utterly defeated. I looked at Mark, then at the envelope of cash in my hand. This money was for something good, something joyful for my family. I didn't want it tainted with this ugliness. Pressing charges would mean court dates, lawyers, and reliving this moment again and again. I had what I needed. I had my dignity, and I had a witness in my brother-in-law. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, my voice clear and steady. I looked directly at the weeping woman. "But I want you to remember this. I want you to remember my face. I'm a software engineer, a husband, a soon-to-be father of 2. And the next time you see a black man and feel that little knot of suspicion in your stomach, I want you to remember how wrong you were today. And then I want you to do better." Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, the envelope of cash feeling heavier, but also more meaningful than it had before. The sun was bright, the air was crisp, and I had a surprise to plan for my wife. The ugly encounter couldn't take that away from me. As I walked to my car, I saw Mark escorting a humbled Carol back into the bank to speak with Mr. Henderson. I knew with absolute certainty that her days of terrorizing service workers and innocent bystanders were finally over.